Welcome to Riding the Trauma Train, or welcome back if we've shared this space before. I'm Lydia, your host and fellow passenger in this journey of self-healing, inner strength and personal growth. This podcast is a safe, judgment-free space dedicated to the realities of living with and healing from trauma. Through personal stories and in-depth conversations with special guests, including therapists, healers, practitioners, and fellow survivors, we look at what healing can truly look like in everyday life. We explore realistic healing journeys and share simple, sustainable practices and actionable tools to support your well-being along the way. So grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember, you are not on this journey alone. Today, we are joined by Lejla. Now, Lejla is the founder of Lejla, Please Tell My Story, and the Survivor Circle. She is doing incredible work working with survivors of domestic abuse and to help them find their voice, feel seen, and to begin to rebuild their lives. So wherever you are, grab your ticket, take a seat, and remember you are not alone on this journey. Lejla, thank you so much for joining me on Riding the Trauma Train.
Thank you for having me, Lydia.
Let's start off with Please Tell My Story. Now, that literally hit me in the heart. Like, Lejla, please tell my story.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like a little child saying, please tell. And so just tell me how this came about.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to have to go back to the beginning if that's okay in order for it all to kind of
Absolutely.
make sense. So thank you so much for the introduction. I'm Lejla. I'm the founder of a female survivor movement called Lejla, Please Tell My Story, and also the Survivor Circle. I support women in their recovery after leaving a perpetrator, because oftentimes we're just told to leave, and then we do leave, and then it's like, oh my God, there's no support available whatsoever for survivors. And I found in particular myself, I wanted a community of female survivors around me. And I had friends in my life at the time who had been through domestic abuse, because it's 1 in 3 women, right, statistically, but we know it's more because it's underreported. But the friends in my life at the time, and I understand, because they didn't have access to recovery, access to therapy, they were very avoidant. They didn't want to talk about it, but I wanted to talk about it. I've always been a talker. And I was just desperate to be seen and heard. So I left my ex-husband after 8.5 years of being with him, subjected and trapped by his abuse. And that was in October 2019. Well, then, of course, 5 months later, we were all in a worldwide lockdown, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, what the? I've just left. I finally thought I was going to, access a form of freedom. And now we're all locked inside our homes and none of us can actually do much. We couldn't go anywhere. And I just felt so desperate, Lydia. I was in complete despair, if I'm honest. I was so depressed and anxious, and being depressed and anxious at the same time is not fun at all. And I just wanted to find a community of survivors, of female survivors, somewhere that I could talk to, that I could have these discussions with out in the open. I didn't want to hide what had happened to me, because I'd hidden it for 8.5 years. So where I was subjected to the abuse, at first I didn't even realize I was a victim until almost towards the end, when I started going to therapy. Shout out to my therapist for saving my life. And yes, I really wanted to talk about it, but it just seemed like this huge taboo around the topic itself. A lot of women, they didn't want to open up the conversation. They didn't want to feel weak for having been a victim. They didn't even want to have that label. And I didn't feel like that. I didn't even feel like that whatsoever. And I wanted to educate myself. I wanted to access resources, and I just wanted to be in community with other women. And no matter where I searched, I couldn't find it. The resources you can find wherever you go, right? Because there's charities and organizations, but the community was what was lacking. And it wasn't even that it was lacking in quality. It just didn't really exist much. So in October 2020, so a year after leaving my ex-husband, I started making videos sharing survival stories on behalf of other women. And the first video I made instantly went viral, overnight, which to me at the time was just so indicative of this desperate need for this safe space for women to come and just unpack their stories somewhere. And even the tagline, Lejla, please tell my story, I didn't create that. It was because the women were in my DMs, in the thousands, can you please tell my story? Lejla, please, can you tell my story the way that you told that other woman's story? And that's how Layla, please tell my story as like the name of the movement came about, because I was just initially making the videos and they had no title. I was just saying these are
Hmm.
anonymous stories on behalf of other women. And that quickly grew, very quickly, actually. First, women only wanted to come forward anonymously because they were terrified of the judgment, of the shame, the blame that we do receive from society in general, and then not even to mention institutionally and systemically. But quite quickly into doing those stories, the women whose stories I told anonymously were coming forward and they were like, I actually don't want to be anonymous anymore. I want you to put my name to my story, my face to my story, and I want the world to see me for who I am. I think oftentimes we have these campaigns of domestic abuse and the victims are like in the corner carrying, bloodied and bruised, hands over the head, or they're just blacked out figures. And myself included, and the women in the community that formed, we would just say like, I don't recognize myself in those campaigns. I wasn't that woman. And that's why I never thought that I was a victim. I wasn't shy. I was always confident. I was always a feminist. I was always very loud and, forthcoming with my views and my voice. I was the main breadwinner. I was everything that society thinks that a woman should be so that she's not a victim. And yet it still happened to me. This whole new move started off the back of that. So it's just like waves and tsunamis, really. And that then led into the evolution of what I now have is the Survivors Who Broke Their Silence, which is a full-blown production where women come onto the platform and share their stories publicly.
Yeah, and I've had a look, and they are so moving. And I think actually the fact that to say your story anonymously is powerful for yourself. To get your face and have a video recording and to talk, it is just, oh, I've literally got goosebumps everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're right, like there is no perfect picture of what you should look like.
No.
There's no, like, strong independent women can be abused. There is no kind of, oh well, she was a breadwinner. No, she was fine. She was
Yeah.
allowed.
Yeah.
So I totally get that, and I think um it's just going to help so many other people speak up. Now that may not be to authorities or anything, but it may just be to their perpetrator, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that is amazing. So, how did you go from Layla, please tell my story to the survivors circle? Because that is,
Sure.
I saw that, I seen you walk out on stage and this big circle behind you, and I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then obviously we've connected after. So tell me about the survivor circle.
Yeah, sure. So it was, I guess, like just most of my work, it's had this really natural evolution based off what the women are saying to me, based off their thoughts and their feelings and their needs. What was happening was, even though the platform was growing and women were feeling more confident, and I could see that even sector wide, it was having this impact where even huge charities were no longer producing these campaigns where women were anonymous and
Mhm.
cowering in the corner, where they were actually using real voices. So it had a huge impact, sector wide. But essentially, no matter how successful the stories were in terms of gaining the traction that they needed to have the voices heard, the common theme throughout was that the women were saying, I don't have access to recover from this. Maybe
Mhm.
not quite in those words, but that's what felt common throughout their stories, was that it's all great to tell women to leave, but then what? And
Yeah.
that's exactly how I felt. And so I was just listening to them thinking, okay, what can I do? In fact, I remember on the first production that I created, I came home that night and I burst into tears and I was like, do you know, it'd be really nice if we could have all had the chance to go to like a spa or like a retreat afterwards. And this
Yeah.
idea started forming in my head, and it was just like a tiny little seed, and it snowballed, and there's so many parts to as to how the survivor circle was created. So I'm just going to share all of it and we'll all get to how and why it was
No, that's
created.
awesome.
So I remember thinking, like something should be done. Like if women are now having this confidence to come forward, they should also have the access to recover from this, to heal from this. I myself was going to therapy, as I said. I actually started going to therapy whilst I was with my ex-husband because I genuinely thought I was crazy. Like I would gaslighting was like one of the main forms of abuse that I experienced. So I honestly thought I was going absolutely batshit insane. Sorry for swearing.
No, that's cool.
And I
It's what
remember
it is.
yeah, no, that's Jay, that's what gaslighting is.
Yeah.
That's what it makes you feel like. And I remember my first therapy session, I sat across from my therapist and I was like, my marriage is failing and it's my fault. And luckily, my therapist saw straight through it. As I said, shout out to him for saving my life. And by the third session with him, I realized I was like, huh, none of this is my fault. I'm not crazy. I'm actually being abused. And it was
Mhm.
just, I couldn't believe it was like my whole world came crashing around me. And I continued with therapy. And I've had the same therapist for 6.5 years. And I was still going to therapy continuously. And my work was growing in the community and I was public speaking. So that's a big part of my job is public
Mhm.
speaking. And I remember I was going to therapy every single week, no joke, every single week. And I just felt like I hit a brick wall. I got on stage once, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I can't remember now. And I was actually going to announce that I was beginning to create a recovery program for women who had survived domestic abuse. I got on stage, I did a whole keynote. Did I even mention the program? Not once, right? And I remember getting off stage and being so disappointed in myself.
Mm.
I just thought, how could I forget to say that? And it wasn't that I just felt like I'd let myself down. I'd let the women in the community down
Mhm.
that I created and lovingly nurtured, my work is my whole entire life. I absolutely love what I do. And it took me a really long time to accept and sit with how uncomfortable that was for me. And that it coincided with me going to therapy every week. I was like, why am I not progressing? I'm going to therapy every week. I'm doing everything people told me. I left. I'm going to therapy. I have this whole community. I'm here. I look like Survivor Thriver. I'm on stages sharing my story. And no matter how many women were saying, Layla, you've changed my life. Thank you so much for your work and for the awareness and for the education. I was stuck
Mhm.
and I became a little bit obsessed with researching why. I was literally like, why am I not progressing in my recovery journey? And I started to realize that actually this wasn't just something that I could talk myself out of, that the impact that trauma has physiologically on women, especially women who have experienced forms of abuse, whether it's domestic abuse, sexual violence, it's out of this world. It's astronomical. And we don't talk about that enough. We just
Mhm.
tell women to leave and then we don't offer them access to therapy after. And then we don't actually educate them on what it truly means to recover. And I was thinking, what are other people doing in the world? What are they doing? Because we have 12 steps program for addiction.
Mhm.
In America, you have full-blown recovery programs for cult survivors.
Yeah.
And I was researching all of this and I was like, what are these recovery programs doing for survivors? And if domestic abuse is so prevalent and it's this huge issue worldwide, one woman and girl is killed every 10 minutes by a partner or a family member.
Wow.
137 women and girls a day, right? So if it's this huge issue worldwide, why are we not offering women the chance to fully recover and actually become integrated members of community, of society again, so that we stop repeating these cycles? Because
Yeah.
abuse is cyclical. But if we don't educate women and we don't actually give them the tools to recover, then nothing's going to change. And even just education and awareness alone isn't enough to create full change. Then that led to obviously going down a rabbit hole about the brain and body and the nervous
Mhm.
system and how trauma impacts, that the physiological responses and how I mentioned. And I started implementing, like actual physiological work into my recovery. And, we could sit here and just talk about somatic healing, but it's a lot deeper than that. I think even the
Yeah.
term somatic healing really minimizes what somatic healing
Yeah.
is
100%. 100%. I
because
get that.
yeah, right. In order for it to be effective, for the brain and body to connect, it takes specialist work. I did start going to yoga and I did start doing things like EFT. In fact, I was practicing a bit of EFT before I came on this call. And again, just none of it felt like enough because I felt like if I was going to yoga classes, the yogi didn't quite understand me as a female survivor. So all of this, I say all that to say that this all kind of evolved and progressed into, what women need is a specialized, integrated recovery
Mhm.
to actually give them the tools so that they can move through survival. I started to realize that point in my journey leaving wasn't the same as healing. And if I'm feeling like this and I have the privilege to access therapy, to go to these things are expensive.
Uh-huh.
These things are not cheap. You know, even if you do have the finances to afford it, they're not cheap. So if I'm feeling like that, what on earth are other women doing? And that's how the Survivor Circle came about. I had, it really was just born off this idea based off what the women wanted in the community, but also my lived experience as well. I started qualifying in the sector. I then went into the sector to work frontline with victims as an IDVA as well, because I really wanted the experience of what it was like to work with victims in crisis, because I knew that all of it, some way, somehow, was going to shape me as a practitioner and shape my work going forward. So I did that, and I was just taking a lot of the things that women were saying to me and implementing them into the program. Okay, this is what they need support with, this is what they need support with. And the program works off a framework of therapeutic based care, but also I have a clinical partner who delivers a lot of the nervous system work too. So anything that I'm not qualified in, I bring in other professionals to deliver the
Yeah.
work, because, you know, like this work is about women's lives. It's about
Hmm.
not just saving, but we're changing it. We're breaking cycles. And in order to do so, it needs to be done safely. So for me, it's
Yeah.
really important to have professional practitioners who can come in, but also who have lived experience themselves. That's really important to me, and who just understand the needs of the women who are undertaking the program. And that's how it came about. The Survivor Circle itself, how it came about, and how I came up with the name The Survivor Circle was very much based off that moment that I got on stage to share the fact that I was thinking about creating this program and my body knew that I wasn't ready to do it.
Yeah.
And so I had this full circle moment at the end of my own recovery journey. Well, I'm not at the end of my recovery journey, but just at this particular period of realizing, oh my God, it's like I'm coming full circle. Yeah, this is the survivor circle. We're learning how to live with freedom. And that's
Yeah.
how it was born, the survivor circle, learning how to live with freedom. And I did run a pilot recovery as well. So back in September 2024, I was awarded a pot of funding. It wasn't a huge pot of funding, but I'm a survivor. I'm resourceful. I made it work. And I got myself and some of the other women in the survivor community to actually test my theory, to test my concept, and also the practical stuff that I'd been doing. And we did it. And not only did it work, but the impact it went on to have in the women's lives has changed the way they navigate their lives now, even to this day. It's had such a life-changing impact on them. In fact, some of the women who've sat the program will say to me, like, you know, a few days ago, my perpetrator breached his injunction, and normally that would have spiraled into anxiety and depression. And actually, this time I was able to act on it appropriately, understand what was happening to me in my nervous system, and know that I was safe. And
Hmm.
I was able to recover from that trigger so much faster than I've ever been before. And I was also able to actually act on what I needed to do legally as well, because, you know, this is the thing. Domestic abuse doesn't have an end date, whether you leave or not.
No.
And the point of the program isn't, I'm not saying to women, you can come onto the program and you're going to be completely healed forever. That's not true. And that's not possible. And if anyone ever tells you that healing has an end date, you need to run away from that person as far as possible. It
Hmm.
is an ongoing journey and it takes
Absolutely.
a lot of work on a daily basis.
Yeah. And it's like with my journey, like we said, like mine is from childhood abuse.
Mm.
Like I'm 30 years down the road now. I got triggered last week and it was from fucking lamb
Yeah,
on a Sunday roast and I was triggered. And we are always going to get these things come up, but like you say, it's knowing what the nervous system is doing. It's knowing how to kind of bounce back from it and regulate yourself, because knowing that you now know that you are in a place of safety, but your body doesn't, so you need to
exactly.
be able
Exactly.
to regulate and then move forward. But having programs like yours where people can then break cycles and they can learn how to empower themselves, because that's what it is. It is unlearning what was happening to you and then moving forward in a way that is going to keep you in a place of safety and give you that strength to become the woman you want to be, basically. So if somebody is kind of still in the midst of the abuse, what would you say to them? And if they don't feel ready to move forward, obviously, I know you said you were in it for 8.5 years. Is there anything you would say if you do recognize this thing, or
Mm.
is it literally dependent on the
Yeah.
relationship, I suppose?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. I get this question a lot, and I think sometimes, not that I think you expect this, but I just think sometimes in general, there's this expectation that I'm going to have a perfect answer to it, or
Hmm.
there is a perfect answer to it in general, and that it doesn't exist. Essentially, every victim survivor's circumstances is different. The context of their lives is different. What's happening to them at the time is different. The risk that they're under is different.
Hmm.
But what I can say is not to minimize what's happening. A lot of times we are spiritually gaslit into thinking, oh, he'll change. I mean, I use he, she pronouns because my work is obviously centers female survivors. So, of course, this happens to absolutely anybody. But, we often think, oh, my husband just had a really bad childhood. That's why he behaves this way. My husband has a gambling or an alcohol addiction or drug addiction. It's because of that. Well, he's got poor mental health. It's because of that. And actually, nothing negates the fact that domestic abuse is a choice. I had a really awful childhood abuse. I went through it too. I don't go around abusing my partner. Like I experienced a lot of I'm also a genocide survivor. I'm originally from Kosovo. There are multiple different
Hmm.
traumas that happened to me in my life, and I don't go around abusing people. And I often say to women, when they say, "Oh, he's just lost control," maybe I pushed him or maybe I provoked him. If your partner was at work, so let's say in more of a social setting, say if it was at work and his manager shouted at him, would he get up and punch his manager?
Mm.
So actually, it's not that he's lost control at all. He's very much in control because he knows how to control it when he's outside the home.
Yeah.
I just implore women to not minimize what is happening and see it for what it really is, which is a threat to your life. And that's the reality. When I was with my ex-husband, and I'm not going to go into any violent and abusive details, but some of the forms of abuse I did experience was non-fatal strangulation. I had no idea until when I left that perpetrators who use strangulation are 7 times more likely to kill their victims. I had no idea how much danger I was actually under.
Yeah.
And even working frontline with women in crisis, as an IDVA, when I was writing up my notes supporting women, I was writing my notes up as if I was going to end up in court for a domestic abuse homicide.
Hmm.
That's how we work in the sector because that's the reality that women do end up being killed by their perpetrator. And so it's really important for me to not minimize any of this whatsoever.
Statistics like really kind of slap you in the face, don't they? It's like a real big whew. What do you think then is it's right, that has literally like almost stopped me in my tracks because it's really, really scary.
Hi, Lydia, and this is the thing. I say it like really matter of
Uh-huh.
factly, because I lived it. I know it. But if
Yeah.
had I have understood the danger I was under at the time, maybe it may have been a lot sooner that I actually seeked help.
Yeah.
But remember, because I didn't recognize that I was a victim, I didn't have the language for it. I didn't even know that what was happening to me was strangulation. The first
Mhm.
time I reported it to the police after I left, I wrote down on the police report, even in my divorce papers and the petition, I wrote down that he put his hands around my neck and sat on my chest. That's strangulation, but I
Yeah.
didn't have the language for it. I didn't actually know what it was called. I didn't even think that it was that.
Yeah. I think that when you go through something though, like you say, the minimization of it is also we are desensitized by television. We are
Mm,
also when we watch things like movies and things, we see worst case scenarios. We see everything in this big dramatic thing. So when something is happening and you're in the midst of it, you literally get, oh, well, it's not that bad because I've seen that and this. And
yes.
it's
Yeah.
recognizing that when you're in that moment, take yourself out of it. And what would you say if your sister said that to you? What would you say if your best friend
Exactly.
said that to you? Like, that is when you need to kind of take you up, because I have minimized my childhood abuse so much,
Yeah.
and I still do to this day. I was talking to my therapist. I was like, "Oh man, oh, that was a really bad environment." And I'm just like, "But if
Yeah.
someone
And
else
then
did
on
it to
top of
me."
that, you've actually got memory block because of trauma
Uh-huh.
and because of the way PTSD, works in the body and the brain.
Absolutely. So what would you say to somebody then if, like you said, they are minimizing it and they don't want to tell, like if they've left that abuse and they're like, okay, what do you think would happen it to their identity if they don't share their story? What do you think changes within them if they don't feel like they have the voice to tell their story?
That's okay. It's okay. There's no perfect way to recover.
Hmm.
There's no perfect, you don't have to come forward and share your experience with anyone after leaving. We're talking about after leaving, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
just to make that clear, because we're not, if
Sorry.
because if you're in crisis, very much please seek help and keep
Yeah.
yourself safe.
100%.
But if we're talking about after leaving, I think it's quite easy to get caught up in savior syndrome. I think a lot of
Okay.
survivors experience that they leave and they have this moment of clarity and they're like, oh my God, I want to save all of the women now.
Yeah.
And the reality is a lot of practitioners move from that space, and even practicing that way isn't safe either because you can't save everyone. That's the
No.
reality. You can't save everyone, but you don't have to. You don't have to come forward and share your story. You don't have to be loud about it. You don't have to get on stages and huge platforms to do that. There is no right or wrong way for you to recover. It's about what makes you feel good.
Yeah. Awareness for yourself.
Yeah, right. But what I would say is also give yourself what you deserve, which is the chance to recover from it. Whether you
Yeah.
want to do it out loud in public like I do, because I share my life on a daily basis, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to become this well-known advocate, trying to save everyone else. You don't have to do that. It's absolutely okay for you to just recover in that
And
way
to save
privately if you want
yourself.
to. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. Heard recovery journey the other day. Like I say my healing journey, but somebody else said recovery. And I just think it is recovery because you're recovering from
Yeah.
something. Like if you broke your leg, you recover from a broken
Yeah.
leg. Like this is
Exactly.
still something that has happened to your body. So what do people misunderstand about domestic abuse?
There's a good question. I think the biggest misconception of domestic abuse is that people think domestic abuse is over constant chaos and violence. And if I talk about it in the context of my own personal lived experience, for me, it wasn't obviously chaotic all the time. It was chaotic, but it wasn't obviously chaotic. And I use this example a lot. I don't know if you used to watch EastEnders like in the early 2000s when they had Trevor and Mo as the characters.
Yeah.
And Trevor would just come home from the pub drunk and he would just punch her and hit her. And it always just seemed as if the violence was every single day. And no matter what Mo did, he was always going to be violent. But for me, it wasn't like that. It wasn't violent every day. But it wasn't violent every day because he didn't need to be. The
Hmm.
chaos existed, but it was far more insidious and calculated because he'd done such a good number on gaslighting me that he didn't need to always exert violence because I knew that the threat of it was there regardless because he'd put in
Hmm.
the work, right? And because he wasn't violent every day, I didn't recognize what was happening to me. Even
Yeah.
though, even though I was constantly monitoring my tone, my words, my reactions, what mood he was in when he came through the door. So I was still doing it without the violence being present every single day.
Hmm.
He made me feel mentally unstable, and that was enough for the control to work. I often say to women I work with, sometimes, and actually just women in general, whether I'm working with them or not, they'll say, I didn't experience domestic abuse. He never hit me. He was just really emotionally manipulative. And I say that oftentimes I actually know that those perpetrators are the most dangerous
Hmm.
because that shows me that actually is really good at having that much coercive control over you, that he doesn't need to exert violence because you're still changing your behavior to suit the needs of the perpetrator.
Accommodate what his, yeah,
Yes, absolutely.
absolutely.
you're managing your risk. That's domestic abuse. It doesn't need to be violent. And that's why I don't even, well, we stopped saying domestic violence in the sector a long time
Yeah,
ago, but
domestic abuse now, yeah.
yeah, but like socially, it's still used as well, and it absolutely drives me insane. Because that's why women don't realize that they're victims, because the
Yeah.
focus is constantly on the violence, and it's not just that. There's so much more to it.
If you relate it back to, if we think of a domestic abuse situation and we think of my situation or a child and an adult situation, that child and adult is being groomed.
Hmm.
It is the same thing with domestic abuse. It
Yes.
is the manipulation, it is the gaslighting, is the grooming, is just
Yes.
a different
That
terminology for it.
I I actually use this in my language when I am, if I'm giving training or any talks I do, or even just working with women themselves, I do use the term grooming, because
Mhm.
we like to call it love bombing, but it's not as grooming.
No, it's grooming, 100%.
Yeah, and a big part of like when I was researching what other programs were doing, in particular cult survivors for their recovery programs, I started realizing the crossover between the tactics that cult leaders use and perpetrators in intimate partner violence, but also familial abuse as well. So parent to
Mhm.
child. It was almost one and the same. And that's when I started to
Yeah.
realize. And I was like, oh my God, like, this is
Yeah.
also intrinsically linked. And a lot of times I'm very careful about the language that I use, especially on social media, because they become buzzwords. And
Yeah.
actually, when they become buzzwords, we're losing the meaning of it. And all that does is, because I said it earlier, it's just constantly minimizing the real risk
Yeah.
that victims are under.
It's the same, and this really, really grips my SHIT, is the word trauma and PTSD and the word depression. All these, again, like you say, buzzwords. Yeah, oh my gosh, that was so traumatic.
Mm.
Running to the post office because it's about to close is not traumatic. Going through abuse is
Yes.
traumatic. Figuring out what you need to put on the plate for dinner because you know that you're gonna get an earful of abuse
Mhm.
if your pee isn't in the right place. Like, it is, I'm on about peas as in garden peas, by the way, just before anything comes at me, I'm like, "Oh my god,
I did
so
think it was the
dodgy."
other way, but
Oh, yeah,
it could,
yeah,
it could very much be true.
exactly, exactly, like, it's scary, and I think there are so many things. I think the desensitization type is a really good, like, analogy because it's like, we watch so many things, we see so many things. I think, yes, it may give us a bit of opportunity to be like, "Oh my gosh, actually, I can see that." But then we also then downplay so much other
Yes.
stuff because of the amount of violence
Yeah.
and random stuff that we see in the media and on, TV.
Well, all of
Yeah.
that, which by the way, none of that is a coincidence. It's a pure strategy. That the whole
Mhm.
point is to desensitize people.
Yeah, which is just blows my mind. Okay, cool. Um, what do you think then safe support actually looks like for survivors?
Depending on where they're at in their recovery. So I think the immediate aftermath after leaving is very much about crisis support. And it's really important to be really clear and transparent that in that immediate aftermath of leaving, you should not be supported by random people on social
Mm,
media. You should be accessing professional support from domestic abuse charities, because they have the governance, they have the resources, they have the means to be able to look after you properly, right? Because the burden of safety shouldn't be left on survivors in that immediate
mhm,
aftermath to keep themselves safe, which is why it's really important for organizations and agencies to be there supporting survivors. I think a little bit further down the line, we're talking about therapy. I think then we're talking about a lot of not just talking therapy as well. A lot of survivors turn to somatic therapy. A lot of them do. I'm really clear about my work online, because there's a fine line, especially, so I'm saying line a lot. There's a fine line if you go on social media where everybody calls themselves a coach.
mhm.
Great, time and place for it, absolutely. But when you are supporting women who have survived domestic abuse, you cannot just call yourself a life coach, because these women have got multiple traumas going through their brain and
Yeah.
their body. which at any moment, at any given trigger, could spiral them into poor mental health. And then we don't know what that could spiral into and lead into. We're talking about addiction. We're talking about mental illnesses like schizophrenia and bipolar. Please do not seek support and help from people who don't have the specialties to do so. That's
Mhm.
really important. And that's why I do not call myself a coach. I never call myself a coach because I don't want women to have the wrong impression. And
Yeah.
also, when you are going through a healing journey, no one can do it for you. People can be there to guide you and to hold the space and to facilitate the space and to give resources and access to the resources and the tools, but nobody can do it for you. And it's something that you have to prioritize yourself. Recovery work is really deep.
Yeah.
Recovery work is really deep. And for me, every time I've wanted to go a bit deeper, I've specifically gone out and sought someone who I know will be right for me, not just because someone on Instagram or TikTok said, "Hey, can I just give you this free service for a shout out?" Like I don't do that on any of my
Mhm.
platforms. I will go and seek out the professional help that I need. Even for example, I want to take up strength training now. I've never been that girl to go to the gym. I hate the
Yes.
gym. I hate the gym. I cannot explain to you. I do not go to the gym, but the deeper I get into my recovery, it doesn't stop. I know that it doesn't stop. You know, even as my work and my career evolves, I know that my recovery journey is going to evolve. And so I've been looking a lot into strength training and the physiological impact that can have on women who are recovering from multiple different forms of trauma. And so now I know, now that I have that understanding, that awareness, so that's something I want to take on because let me tell you something, I don't want to just feel mentally strong. I want to feel physically strong, like I can bench press the weight of 10 men.
Right.
That will make me feel strong in my
Yes.
recovery.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sat here and I've got this like really big grin on my face, and I need to tell you why because it looks really dodgy. So basically, I am training at the moment to be a personal trainer and
Mhm.
a mental health exercise coach, and it's going to be called Right Track Wellbeing
Oh, I love that,
with
yeah.
the whole in riding the trauma train, Right Track Wellbeing. And that is I just hit the microphone. That is literally what I'm doing. I'm helping women through mindset and movement through their
Mhm.
trauma
Mhm.
to help their recovery. And that is what I've been training to
Yes.
do for months, a month since I
And
want
this
around
is what I
3.
mean. This is what is so desperately
Yeah.
needed when we're talking about recovery. Like even myself, I'm currently studying to become a therapist because the recovery program as it is cannot stay as it is. It needs to
Mhm.
evolve. And in order for it to
100%.
evolve, I can't just see this through and lead this, and not go and qualify in it myself. It doesn't even
Yeah,
make sense. That's why I went and qualified as an IDVA because I was like, how can I support women in any capacity? And I haven't even gone to sort out the academic so
yeah.
side of it. That's just not how it works. So I'm actually currently sitting my studies to become a therapist because I think if we are going to do this work and we're going to do it properly and safely, then we need to put our money where our mouth is.
Exactly that, which is why it makes me chuckle even more, the fact that we are both literally on the same journey. Just find it really,
You know
really
what?
funny.
I'm not gonna lie, Lydia. Part of me is like, I'm jealous. I'm like, oh, she's only got childhood trauma. Oh, I'm jealous.
It's just mad though, isn't it? Because like I am seriously such a believer in I used to say everything happens for a reason, but it doesn't. So I was corrected by a lady that I had on the podcast called Chattel, and she was also corrected by another lady that she went on a workshop with, which was everything happens for an opportunity. Now,
That
there is
is
no
hard.
way that I went through that childhood abuse for a reason. There is no bloody reason that I went through that. There is no reason why somebody goes through abuse. There is no reason why
Mhm.
somebody hurts somebody
And
else.
I
That
really need people to understand that. I really need
yeah,
people that it doesn't need to have a meaning or a reason why you went through that. It
no,
was all it shouldn't have happened.
no. But if as the victim, as the survivor, we have an opportunity when we have this
Mm.
strength and we have got through it and we're on it, we will not be off this train. We will always be on this train. We will just up the carriages. I'll be first class before I know it. But I forgot my load, went down the train route. So yeah, victim, survivor,
Oh, things happen for a reason.
thank you. So we flip being a survivor, flipping it on its side. Everything happens for an opportunity. So the opportunity is as somebody that is extremely strong on my journey and have got this far in my recovery, I know I can help other
Yes.
survivors. It's the same as with you on your domestic abuse journey. You now know that you can be an advocate for those people that can't speak up for themselves. And
Mm.
that is the point of everything happens for opportunity. Mic drop, I finally got that. But right, with a question then, how do you think this is a deep one. How do you think abuse changes somebody's identity?
How? Gosh, my God, where do I start and where do I stop? I'll be here all day. So let me think of what I think is the most, something that sticks out to me in myself, if
Hmm.
I can relate it back to my own story. As I said, I went to university, right? I got a degree. I had a really, before I worked in Vogue, I worked in civil engineering. I had a really successful career in civil engineering. I worked with data and design management, a bit of a mouthful, team for a whole decade. I was the main breadwinner. I was outspoken. I was loud. I was never afraid to share my opinion on anything. And I realized throughout the relationship that I was losing those parts of myself because I started to shape my behavior to manage and minimize the risk of the perpetrator. So where once maybe I would have shared my opinion, I stopped doing so. But
Yeah.
and I don't mean publicly, I actually mean intimately in the relationship.
Yeah.
Because publicly it was really good to keep, it was really easy, not good, it was really easy to keep up a facade. I wanted everyone to think I was happy. And I think as victims, we become really good at manipulating the situation socially so that other people don't realize what's happening.
It's the mask, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the
it's a
mask that we
mask.
talk about. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So even though I maybe consciously didn't realize I was a victim all that time, I still knew something was wrong. I knew something
Hmm.
was wrong. I just didn't know what it was. And I think the time that I realized my identity had started to be stripped from me was when I became pregnant with my daughter. And throughout my motherhood, whilst I was with my ex-husband, I just never felt like I could be the mother that I wanted to be. I felt like I had to be the mother he wanted me to be, which my form of motherhood, it's very, what they call gentle parenting. I don't know where they came up with this term, but like, I just call it being a normal parent.
Just
It's
being
just called
loving and
being a
bound.
loving, right? Being a loving
Yeah.
parent and actually showing
Sticking
respect
bound.
to your child.
Yeah.
Exactly,
Respect,
right?
boundaries, talking to them like they're humans,
Oh,
not. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas my ex-husband was very much more led with like a disciplinarian, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I remember thinking, one day, most of the abuse was hidden from her too, until it wasn't. Um,
Mhm.
one day there was a huge incident in front of her, verbal, and I remember sitting, it was like in a train station, rush hour in front of everyone. I remember sitting thinking, oh my God, I swore, because one of the things when I was younger going through abuse as a child, I swore I would never be like my mum and I would
Mhm.
never be with a man like my dad. And there I was
Yeah.
in this incident in a busy platform at rush hour where he's screaming and shouting in front of, like in front of not just everyone, but our daughter. And I thought, oh my God, one day you're going to grow up to resent me the same way I resent my mum for not leaving.
Hmm.
Now, don't get me wrong, I love my mother deeply. I love her so deeply. I have so much grace and compassion for her. But as a child, even like as a wounded adult for a really long time, I was really angry and really resentful that she didn't leave. My mother never left my dad. And that was something that I always struggled to process in my own recovery journey. And not just that, but I remember looking at her thinking, not only could you might grow up to hate me and in therapy, but what if actually I'm not here one day?
Hmm.
You know, these small micro moments started happening before I had my big realization. Again, at the time, I still didn't consciously realize that I was a victim, even though these things were happening. So a lot of my identity was stripped from me through that as well.
Yeah.
After leaving, I started to, everyone says, oh, I just want to be the person I was before I met him. I quickly realized that I could never be that person again. It wasn't possible. My identity, whoever I was before him, was gone. There wasn't even the real me, because actually the real me is who I am now, who
Yeah.
is absolutely radical in her sisterhood with other women, who is radical in her feminism, who will stand up for women's rights no matter what. You know, who after leaving, even my sexual orientation, I was like, I'm not even attracted to men. What am I doing? Everything in my life changed. because I finally had the freedom to explore who I truly am.
Yeah.
And I let go of this notion that I want to be who I was before I met him.
Yeah.
She
Do you
doesn't
know
exist
what?
anymore.
You've all I've got you literally said that, and I have got this beautifully, and this is a random, very random vision. I don't know why I've got a vision, but I have. I'm not like I am a little bit woo-woo, but I'm not a psychic or anything. But anyway, by the by, this beautiful, beautiful white and blue, flowery, old school vintage jug. So that's who you were before. And then it's been shattered. All the pieces
Yeah.
have gone, but then it's been glued back together. Still not the bloody same jug. It is, you need a new jug.
You
But that
can't
is what it is.
possibly be the same
No,
person.
exactly
Trauma
that.
changes who you are. Trauma changes
Hmm.
there's so much research out there. And because I'm not actual, like, qualified in terms of like psychiatry and things like that, so I don't want to lead anyone to information that they haven't searched themselves. So please, please, please,
Hmm.
please, please go out there and research this. Trauma changes who you are.
Hmm.
Your whole DNA adapts to it. Your nervous system doesn't even know happy. You know that your nervous system
Hmm.
doesn't know what happiness is. It knows what safety is and what not being safe is. And then if you're in situations that are constantly chaotic and not safe, all your nervous system does is recognize that that's familiar. It doesn't need to be safe. It just needs to feel familiar for your nervous system. And so your nervous system searches that out, which is why even after leaving perpetrators, a lot of women will say, well, like, I don't understand, like I'm constantly still dating the same men or same people. I don't
Yeah.
get it. Like, or they just feel like it's just what they're destined for, right? And then we make jokes
Hmm.
about it, about
Or
being
they go
toxic.
back.
Yeah, or they
Or
go
they
back,
go back,
exactly.
which
Even
is
even
really.
worse, and the most dangerous part of it all is that they go back. And it's really important that women have this education. This is why I can't wait
Hmm.
to actually finally qualify
Yeah.
as a therapist, because then I feel like I have so much knowledge to share people. But as I said, one thing about me is I'm very transparent, and I believe this work needs to be carried out and delivered in a really safe way. So
Yeah.
please, please go and do your own research into this. And also, you're more than capable of going and doing your own research.
Yeah.
You don't need lifestyle gurus or, all of these people on social media to tell you these things. You are more than capable of finding this stuff out for yourself.
Hmm.
That's absolutely okay. You don't have to rely on other people. And part of gaining back your independence after leaving and forming your own identity is doing things like this on your own and feeling empowered to do so.
Yeah. So, and also, if you are as someone that is still within that relationship, like an iPhone has got like those private tabs and stuff.
Mhm.
You can delete your history. There's Chat GBT. There's AI. Like there are so many things that I'm not saying for therapy, but I'm saying for awareness and connection with some of, I want to say symptoms, but it's not symptoms. Some of the things you are experiencing, that if you say, don't think this feels right, you can actually chat to ChatGPT and
Yeah.
say, this is what's going on. I don't feel it's right. Tell me your thoughts, or research the website for me and see what comes
Mm.
up. But obviously, like we've said a million times, the main thing is seek out professional help. Now, what I'll
Yeah.
do in the show notes is I will put so many different resources in so that we've got them there. And I'll obviously also put in your program, your survivor circle, because
Yes.
I think community is really important, because if knowing that you have everyone has been through, if everyone that has been through abuse, it will be different. Like your
Yeah.
body, you may have gone through the same thing, as in the same event, but your body reacts in different ways. You experience it in different ways, and you recover from it in a different way.
Yeah.
So, but it's important to recognize that whatever you're feeling and whatever you are going through, it's normal for you, and you are
Yeah.
allowed to feel that way.
Absolutely.
Can you tell people then that when you have gone through or going through this survival recovery journey, and I know you keep saying you're still in recovery, and we know that it will never end, but when you are in that place where you know you feel safe, and you're in that place where you think, okay, I feel like my nervous system is down. I
Yeah.
feel regulated. How has that made you feel?
As it says, I learned how to live with freedom. So the biggest moment in my life happened to me last year, or one of the biggest moments. In October, I was so stressed at work when I was working frontline. And I realized, because of my recovery and because I had the language and the tools and the awareness and understanding, I realized the reason why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, stressed and anxious, was because I put myself back in the system, because that's all my nervous
Mm,
system knew. So even working frontline in the sector, I'm still part of the system, right? Part of the power structures and the power imbalances. And I took a month off work because I was so stressed and anxious to do my job. And it was almost like that test of, after sitting the pilot recovery, because I was a guinea pig in my own pilot. So after
mhm,
sitting my own pilot, it was like my first test in real life. The program is, if you think about when you go to therapy, the work doesn't happen in the room, it happens outside of the room.
mhm,
And I was kind of like at this crossroads, like, okay, my work, my community work, and my advocacy, and even in terms of global policy reform, is growing at a scale that I cannot keep up with this
mhm,
frontline job. I can't do it. And I'm also super stressed here. So what do I do? Do I leave this job and focus on my work full time? But leaving the job means leaving a whole income. How
mhm.
am I gonna, how am I gonna survive going forward
Yeah,
financially if I drop an income? Or do I stay and remain in this cycle and let my dream run away from me? And the thought of staying and repeating the cycle and letting my dream run away from me, my career, felt far more terrifying than staying in the job itself just for the pay. That
yeah.
sounds very privileged to say, but I promise you, I did not hand in my notice with like funding behind me or
No,
sponsorship. I handed my notice in thinking, I know I can do this.
this is gonna
That,
happen.
yeah, and that the decision wasn't ruled by my nervous system. It was ruled by this really strong sense of, this is what is right for me right now. And
Mhm.
I know everything else will come, because you know what? I survived 100% of all of the days that should have killed me. So now there is nothing that I cannot do. But my nervous system actually felt and believed it.
Is amazing. And that is where so many of us want to be, like that. The nervous it literally is safety, safety,
Yeah.
safety, safety, and which is why that when you are someone that is in recovery, when you do get a trigger or you do go back, your nervous system goes.
Yes.
It's like a white noise, isn't it? So I love the fact that, one, you've made this decision, because, one, that's why we're on the podcast. You, um, it's going to help so many people, and in all fairness, leaving that job means that you've got more direction, you've got more
Absolutely.
resources and more energy to put into this. And what then can you tell the listeners how they can get hold of you? Obviously, not if they're in crisis, if they are
Yes.
past, they are amazing and they've gained that strength and they have left their perpetrator and they are in a bit of a, I don't know what's next. Can you
Yeah,
tell me then?
sure. So I do run the full 6 months integrated program, but I also have tools and resources that women can access before getting to that point. So maybe they're not quite ready to take on the work, the integrated work. And in order to be able to find that, you can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube as Lejla PTMS. So it's Lejla PTMS. So I'm across all platforms under the same name. I also do run consecutively every 6 weeks. I'll be running a free masterclass, a free recovery masterclass. So maybe for the women who are slightly curious at this point, or they just want
Mhm,
to be adding to their toolbox, I do run that. Actually, I'm running one this evening. So by the time this goes out, it won't be relevant. But I do run them every 6 weeks. So please head on over to my social media and get yourselves signed up to it. Like,
mhm,
come and reserve your seat, drop me a DM. We can have a chat about it. But more than that, I want women to know that I always get to this point and then I get emotional, but it's okay because I'm absolutely fine with my emotions. But I want women to know, from someone who's lived it, you don't owe your trauma gratitude. I wasn't shaped into strength because I was abused. I was strong long before it ever happened to me, even if it did start from childhood. And that happening to me didn't make me powerful. Abuse tried to contain who I am. And for years, I adapted. I became quieter, more careful, more skilled at reading the room than actually listening to myself. I learned how to survive instead of taking up the spaces that I should have been taking up. And from the outside, especially as women, it looks like being strong and resilient, but it's not, because on the inside, it's complete self-erasure. And that's something that many women recognize within themselves, even if they've never named it. So leaving wasn't about becoming brave or enlightened. I wasn't strong the minute I left. It was about finally stopping the negotiation of my own reality and saying, no more. This cycle ends with me. I didn't suddenly find my voice. I needed to give myself permission. I said earlier, you are more than capable of going and doing it. Give yourself the permission to do that.
Mhm.
And I want women to know that you don't have to turn your pain into something meaningful just to justify it. You don't owe anyone forgiveness. You don't owe anyone else growth. It doesn't have to be a lesson learned. You are simply allowed to want safety, dignity, and peace, full stop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I would like to leave your listeners with today.
That is amazing. I love that. And however, we can't leave on that note because I have something called the conductor's question.
Let's go.
Okay, so the conductor's question is, if you could sit next to the version of yourself that hasn't yet found her voice, what would you want her to know about what is waiting for her on the other side?
You got me, Lydia. I don't ever cry on podcast interviews. You got me.
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. It's fine. That there's just so much love and joy waiting for her on the other side. Yeah, so much love and joy. I was absolutely terrified the day that I left. I wasn't strong. I was terrified. I thought I'd never be happy again, even though I wasn't happy to begin with. But there was just so much love and joy in the freedom that you're going to have on the other side.
Sure.
I just can't believe, first time we're seeing each other on camera like this, and here I am. But you know what? The beautiful thing about my life now is I actually find crying as a best form of self-care for me personally. So I'm
Mhm.
not scared of feeling emotional.
It's a bizarre feeling. I'm saying bizarre because I've just started specialist counselling, and Monday I cried a lot and I haven't
Mm.
cried for a long time. But what I find beautiful about the fact that, one, that question hit you so hard that you
Yeah,
got that emotional, is that this is the reality of moving on your healing journey. And this is the reality of finding yourself, not just your strength, because we can find strength in so many different ways on so many, like the leap of faith, all these things are strength, but to find power and peace in yourself and safety within yourself is the most powerful.
absolutely.
Okay. On that note, I am going to say, if there are any triggers, obviously get yourself
Mm.
some prices for anybody. There will be lots of things in the show notes. There will be links to Layla's pages, and stay safe. And thank you, Layla, so
Thank you
much
for
for
having me. It
sharing
was a
everything
pleasure.
today. I really appreciate it. Take care. Thank you so much for joining me today on Riding the Trauma Train. I'm Lydia, and I feel privileged to share this space with you. No matter where you are on this train right now, whether it's in survival mode, slowly finding your feet in recovery, or maybe it's somewhere in between, remember, you are not alone in what you're feeling, and you do not have to travel this journey by yourself. So if you'd like to continue traveling together, please follow Riding the Trauma Train wherever you're listening, so you can join us at the next stop. Until next time, take care.